I have an issue with Lex Fridman. I have an issue with all of these fake centrists in politics today contaminating the minds of Americans and further convincing them that Donald Trump's attempt on democracy on January 6th is somehow normal, tolerable, and for the sake of American unity, we must move past this event and leave it in the past. I can't get down with that. Now, Lex Fridman made a post about Kamala Harris becoming the nominee for the Democrat Party, insinuating that somehow or another it's a violation of democracy for Kamala Harris to be anointed as the nominee. Lex Fridman said this: "There needs to be a transparent democratic process for selecting the nominee to replace Biden. Anointing Kamala Harris secretly behind the scenes is not it." Now, I'm going to remind Lex Fridman that Kamala Harris was not secretly appointed behind the scenes. Kamala Harris is on the ticket, or was on the ticket, with Joe Biden. It's called Biden-Harris for a reason. Kind of like Trump-Pence before the Hang Mike Pence stuff. But it's called Biden-Harris for a reason. If you were voting for Joe Biden, you were also voting for Kamala Harris. The reality is every higher-ranking Democrat, from governors to senators to all the legislators, the vast majority of them have endorsed Kamala Harris. We have not seen any uproar from liberals about Kamala Harris being the nominee. It is almost unanimously clear, literally, not almost, very much unanimously clear, that the people of the Democrat Party want Kamala Harris and are happy with Joe Biden stepping down. Not to mention the fact that 70% of Democrats felt like Joe Biden was not fit not only for campaigning, but also to be the president once more. To insinuate that somehow or another you have an issue with democracy being threatened, Lex Fridman, I believe is dishonest of you. I don't believe you actually believe that, and I don't believe that's representative of your actual position. And I have evidence to back that up. Now, Destiny, the streamer, the liberal streamer, responded to your tweet, and Destiny said this. Destiny said, "Me desperately searching for Lex's request for Trump to publish his tax returns, openly testify about his actions before Congress like Hillary did, or his criticisms for Trump dodging Nikki Haley in every single debate request." Lex then responded by saying this: "Sorry you felt the need to tweet this and reduce me in a bad faith way to a trivialized caricature of a centrist you have in your mind. I criticize both sides on the podcast, including Trump, and I have many people on who criticize Trump, including you. Sorry you felt the need to tweet this instead of calling privately. This sucks, brother. Still, I'll continue being respectful and learning from your work." Now, the reality is, Lex, you are a caricaturized, well, in the case of you being real, I guess you're not a caricature. You are, in fact, that caricaturization of a centrist. You, like every other centrist in American political discourse today, is terrified of calling out Donald Trump for exactly what he is. You, along with every other centrist, like Piers Morgan, Tulsi Gabbard, Dave Smith, all of you are terrified of looking Trump supporters in the face and telling them, "I'm sorry, but you are voting for the worst candidate." When we talk about calls to violence, when we talk about threat to democracy, when we talk about the lack of presidential presentation, the lack of acting like a president, the dignity, the poise, the maturity, it is undeniable that Donald Trump has engaged in threats to democracy, calls to violence, and has completely shirked off any concept of presidential presentation, presidential dignity, presidential honesty, and presidential decorum. Ironically enough, you spoke about this with Destiny on your show. On that show, you diminished the seriousness of January 6th. You literally sat there and basically downplayed the seriousness of it and told Destiny we really shouldn't call it out because it would sow division. This is you.
Before I move to that, just on this, it's really hard for him to call out that group of like election deniers, I think, without it always feeling
Well, why call them out?
Because it's arguably one of the most destructive forces that exist in this country today.
Did it destroy anything?
They were trying to.
Did it, though? It didn't, did it?
So does that mean we don't call it out? We wait till next time?
No, because calling it out is giving fuel to the division. Like, the people that doubted the validity of the election, that's anger, that's frustration with the other side. You heal that as opposed to saying all those people that believed that at any time are idiots. They're un-American.
I mean, they don't think the election was real. I don't know if Biden has the ears of these people at all. I don't know what he can do for.
There's people that believe the same thing in 2016 with the Russian hacking, right?
You told Destiny not to call it out because it would cause division. You said that it was caused by people's anger toward the other side, but Lex, this is not true. The reality is, Donald Trump, of his own free will, of his own volition, chose to present lies and falsehoods about the election. Donald Trump, if you read the indictment against him, knew 2 months prior to January 6th that he had lost the election. Donald Trump, despite any and all advisory from individuals in his cabinet who told him the election was not stolen, like his attorney general, ignored every single piece of advice and evidence he had received, and instead chose to go along with Rudy Giuliani's false scheme, his lie to steal the election. Do not for 1 second present this as Trump supporters being angry at the other side. Lay the responsibility for this madness exactly where it belongs. Donald John Trump. He chose to do this, despite being informed that the election was not stolen by as many legal officials in his cabinet as possible. He still chose to go the other way. He still chose to engage with and entertain and conspire with individuals in his team like Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Epstein, these individuals who plotted against the United States to steal the election. That is not anger and frustration with the other side. Furthermore, this idea of it didn't work, did it? In what world do we apply that logic to any violent crime or any conspiracy to defraud something as serious as the election of the United States? Well, it didn't work, did it? It wasn't successful, was it? How many crimes do we apply that to? What about attempted murder? Well, Your Honor, I tried, but clearly he's still here, so let me go. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's logical at all. It's not logical. In fact, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Furthermore, this nonsense about, Hillary and Russiagate. I can admit, I'm a liberal, but I will admit here today that Hillary Clinton was a sore loser. The evidence showed that Trump did not collude with Russia to win the election. However, Hillary Clinton did not file legal cases against Donald Trump. She did not conspire with Joe Biden or try to pressure Joe Biden to throw out the Electoral College votes that helped Donald Trump become president. She did not conspire with people in the Democratic Party to defraud the American people, Donald Trump, and our democracy out of a free and fair election. She didn't do that. There is a difference between Trump and Hillary that Trump supporters have yet to accept, and it's a problem. Was Hillary a sore loser? Yes. If Trump had simply said, frankly, we did win this election, and that was it, that was the end, I wouldn't be discussing this. Trump went too far. Trump went too damn far. Conspiring to steal an election, trying to pressure state officials from Arizona and Georgia and all these other states to throw out Biden votes and replace them with Trump votes. And then when asked for evidence, Giuliani sits there and says, well, I don't have any evidence, but I have a lot of theories. That's not okay. And that's not what Hillary did. Hillary, although she was a sore loser, put her tail between her legs and ran away. Trump, being a sore loser and a criminal and a liar, plotted against the United States to defraud us out of an election, broke his oath to the Constitution, betrayed his supporters, and convinced them to protest outside the Capitol, which then turned into a riot and an insurrection, in which he then does not call them off for 3 hours, decides to call Mike Pence and other legislators to convince and pressure them to commit fraud. Hillary Clinton did none of these things. And Lex, it's time for you, Dave Smith, Tulsi Gabbard, and all the rest of you to acknowledge this difference in reality. I'm sorry, it sucks to admit, but yes, Trump is as bad as the establishment said from day one. I know it's considered globo homo and soy to admit that the establishment was right or to side with the establishment, but I'm a grown-ass man. If Trump wants to lie and deceive and plot and scheme and misrepresent things, there's consequences for that. And I'm not about to just ignore that so I can accrue favor with and to seem cool to Trumpites. I'm a grown-ass man. I'm seeing people like Vivek Ramaswamy and others say, if you don't vote for Trump, you're not a real man. Does a real man use his own supporters as battering rams against the United States government, and then when it fails, frees his circle of goons like Flynn and Bannon, but leaves his MAGA-ite supporters, his Trumpite supporters who stormed the Capitol, he leaves them in prison? That's a real man? If you're going to commit crime, at least stand by your partners in crime. Not just the ones who make you look good when you free them, but also the ones who make you look bad too. Trump is a liar, a deceiver, a manipulator, and because of his lies, someone died in the Capitol. Lex, it's time for you and every single other centrist to acknowledge reality and join the rest of us in reality. Yes, Trump is that bad, and he's only that bad because he chose to be. No one put him up to, well, Giuliani did put him up to it, but Trump chose to follow. Trump is a 70-something-year-old man. He's too old at this point for me to sit there and make excuses for him. He's been around the block enough to know that this is wrong, and he still chose to do it. This is who he is. This is his character. This is who he is. It's in him to be dishonest and manipulative and a liar and a fraud. It is in him. And that's just the truth. Then you say we shouldn't call it out because it sows division. No, I firmly believe conservatives are tough. They claim to be tough. They claim to be able to sustain facts over feelings. Why can't I tell them you got duped? You got played. You got finessed. Trump lied to you. Giuliani lied to you. Giuliani's infamous words when speaking to the Arizona Speaker of the House was, "We don't have any evidence, but we have a lot of theories." For the last 3 years, neither Giuliani nor Trump have been able to produce any evidence of a stolen election. It is not a coincidence that every single state official from all of the states involved in the conspiracy told Trump, "We have not found any fraud." These are not individuals who oppose Trump. These are individuals who are bureaucrats who have no political allegiance. They simply work for their states. These individuals who told Trump, "We have not found any fraud," these individuals in his own administration, in his own cabinet, told him, "We have not found any fraud." All of the individuals who told Trump that there was no fraud stood to gain from joining in with Trump to lie. Lex goes on to say, well, it didn't work, did it? The attempt against democracy didn't work, did it? The reason why it didn't work, Lex, is because individual Americans like Mike Pence chose to uphold their oath to the Constitution over upholding some sense of loyalty to a single man. That is the reason why it didn't work. There is a litany of video of J6ers looking for Nancy Pelosi.
Where are you, Nancy? We're looking for you. She's in jail. Nancy. Oh, Nancy. Nancy. Where are you, Nancy?
Calling for the execution of Mike Pence. These things exist. These videos exist. These individuals were lied to by a man they trusted. He put a battery in their backs and encouraged them to protest outside the Capitol. But there's a problem. Donald Trump sat there and said, "You gotta fight like hell or you won't have a country anymore." What that implies is democracy has been stolen, and the individuals who stole it from you maintain power and are in that Capitol. The only way for you to return democracy back to America is to assault said Capitol and eject the election thieves. That is literally the only common sense solution. A part of me can't even blame them for storming the Capitol, because what else can you do? If the election's been stolen, democracy has been stolen, you have no other recourse. The problem was, the thief was the one pulling the strings the whole time. Donald Trump's own Attorney General Bill Barr resigned as a result of this scheme, and then his new one, Jeff Rosen, still refused to participate in the conspiracy to steal an election. Donald Trump's own Attorney General Bill Barr said that there was no evidence of election fraud and had to resign as a result of the conspiracy and planned coup that was going on in Trump's upper inner circle. On top of that, the next Attorney General, Jeff Rosen, also condemned the conspiracy and refused to participate in it. Trump's own VP, when presented with an opportunity to consolidate power and to retain power into both his and Donald Trump's hands, chose to do the right thing. Part of me feels bad for some of the J6ers, because the person actually trying to orchestrate a theft was the individual who put them up to it in the first place. And that's disgusting to me. And that needs to be called out. And maybe laughing at Trump supporters, humiliating them, clowning them, that might be the only way. I've never met a Trump supporter who's been confronted with evidence about this that has said, you know what? I changed my mind. I don't believe any and everything Donald Trump tells me. I don't believe that the only person telling me the truth is Donald Trump. I've yet to meet a Trump supporter who's willing to meet me, a liberal, in the middle and discuss this honestly, earnestly, and try to be open to the evidence that's been presented against Trump by people who worked in his own administration. His own administration. I have not yet met a single Trump supporter who is willing to do that, and that's a problem. Because it illustrates an issue of Trump supporters believing anything that man tells them no matter what. It is effectively a cult. We have half of the country living in their own separate reality, orchestrated and built by a single man. Despite the fact that the United States is not a nation of men, but a nation of laws. And half of the country has been convinced to ignore the Constitution, the document of which Donald Trump called for the suspension of. Half of the country has been convinced to abandon reality, to abandon truth, to abandon criticism. And this was a movement that lectured people like, that lectured liberals about honesty, truth, facts before feelings, suspicion of government. And now that same political movement has no suspicion of their leader. They don't suspect Trump. They don't investigate Trump. They don't ever think that maybe Trump could be lying to them. All of these things are beneath them. They refuse to engage in that. That is not okay. Calling it out is not sowing division, because the consequences that come from not trying to reach out to Trump supporters and inform them of this is the downfall of American democracy, the downfall of our republic. That is exactly what the outcome is if you don't reach out to Trump supporters and say, hey, this was dumb, this was stupid, and here's why. It's stupid to not call it out, and it costs us our country. And for you as a foreigner to reaffirm and support this in the minds of my countrymen bothers me. It deeply bothers me. The problem is, Lex, is that you, along with every single other centrist, are cowards. And I say that in a polite way. You are all afraid of MAGA. The reality is there's no equality between Joe Biden and Donald Trump in terms of threat to democracy, lack of presidential decorum, lack of honesty, calls for violence. Donald Trump is significantly worse. The problem is Trump's base has been primed by both aggressive liberal media critiquing every little thing Trump does, and also Trump himself, to believe that any critique of Trump, even if it's a whole bunch, is automatically, especially if it's a whole bunch, is especially wrong. It's never correct. If you critique Trump too much, you must have Trump derangement syndrome. And take this coming from someone who only hopped off the Trump train a year ago. I've never had a strong dislike of Trump. I've always thought he was funny, a little bit tough, sometimes said too much and didn't know how to shut up, but I never hated the guy. It wasn't until I read about January 6th that I realized this guy was everything that everyone warned us he was from day one. I don't have some burning hate in my heart for that man. I don't know the man. But as an American citizen, this concerns me. It's my business, and I have every right to survey exactly what he did and come to my own conclusion. You and every single centrist are afraid of simply telling Trump supporters, look, I'm sorry. Trump did falsely accuse Biden of trying to assassinate him at Mar-a-Lago, even though Trump was informed ahead of time of the raid that they were coming by the FBI, even though they showed up when Trump was not there on purpose, even though when they raided Joe Biden, they also had lethal force authorized against him as well, because as it turns out, even if you're the president, if you try to use lethal force to obstruct the FBI, they reserve the right to use lethal force against you. even if you're a seated or former president. For all you know, it might not be the president who's shooting back. It could be someone staying in the house. You never know. The point being is the FBI reserves the right to use lethal force to retain federal documents in the event that the subject of the raid tries to obstruct it with lethal force. This is common sense. Trump takes this reality and shifts it into something completely different to convince his base that Biden tried to kill him. Donald Trump posted a picture of Joe Biden hogtied. Donald Trump clowned the fact that Paul Pelosi was assaulted. His own son joked about it. Donald Trump talked about punching people at his rallies. Donald Trump has been egging on violence for the longest time and attempted a coup against the United States of America. Most Trump supporters don't want to hear this. The problem is, if all of you in one fell swoop forced them to confront this reality, you'd have nothing to be afraid of. But you're all afraid because you know that you can critique liberal politicians and liberal fans of yours aren't going to hold you at gunpoint and demand that you stop critiquing their favorite politician or else they're leaving. But you know in your heart of hearts, and every single one of you centrists know in your heart of hearts, that if you critique Trump honestly and earnestly, it will look biased because Trump is infinitely worse than Biden. You're afraid of doing that. You're absolutely afraid. You're afraid of losing your centrist card. Because if you critiqued Trump, again, I'll say it again, if you critique Trump, it would seem biased because Trump is infinitely worse than Biden. And if you critique the two, your critiques of Biden would stop somewhere and your critiques of Trump would go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Because as it turns out, Trump is not God. He's a man. And he makes mistakes. And he does bad things. And he's got a longer streak of those than Joe Biden. It's just the truth. You're afraid. You're afraid of losing your centrist card. You're afraid of appearing to be biased when you're not. You're afraid of Trump supporters perceiving you in a way that's not real simply because they are unwilling to divorce themselves from a fantasy. Until you and the rest of centrist political commentators can grow a spine and confront the Trumpites and present truth to them and take them on, you have no right to talk about Kamala Harris's appointment being undemocratic when you literally sat there in front of destiny and excused undemocratic activity and an attempt to steal the election. Like, how you can even bring yourself to think of yourself as a centrist critiquing Kamala while letting Trump go scot-free is insane. And I've seen that you interviewed Ivanka recently. No critiques of January 6th, no deep conversations about politics. It's really unique and weird and interesting that you decided to interview her in this time of election season. The reality is you're not a centrist right now. And you could be in the future, but you aren't one right now. Until you and the rest of centrist politics are ready to confront Trump, you're all just his agents. You're all just cowards in my book. Scared, afraid of MAGA, afraid of the Trumpites. I'm done calling them MAGA because this isn't about America to them. It's all about Donald Trump. He's king in their eyes. And any critique, especially if it's a lot, is automatically TDS. Because apparently Trump never being wrong is not Trump derangement, but you constantly critiquing him somehow is. As of right now, you're not a centrist. But if you decide to actually confront the realities of what Trump has done and acknowledge them and be equal and fair and risk losing some of your audience, then it would be fair to call you a mediator, a centrist, and someone who's promoting unity. But until then, I have to call you what you are. Someone who's afraid.